Hi, I'm John. I live an adventurous life, and I try to capture on camera each challenge I face to share them with my YouTube channel subscribers. I love traveling and capturing my trips on video. Once my car suddenly died during one of these trips, and I ended up on the road somewhere in the woods. Having no choice, I took my camera and walked to find some help. Deep wood seemed more murky with each step I took, and the sounds of nature aroused anxiety in me. I saw a small village hidden behind old trees. It seemed to be abandoned both by time and by people. The house with a light on its window stood alone in the center of the village. I knocked at the door, and an old man whose name was Bob opened it. He was surprised seeing me here, as apparently guests were a rare thing in this village. I explained the issue occurred to my car and asked if I could stay for a night. I didn't have any suspects at that time that this night would be a starting point for the most terrifying adventure in my life. We spent the evening chatting. Bob told me about this village which was once full of life, yet with time its inhabitants moved from there, and he remained the last resident of this place. His words seemed full of nostalgia and longing for bygone times. When I fell asleep, the house was deadly silent, and only some random noises of an old wooden home occurred. It was a real feeling of being captured in another world, far away from modern life's hassles. I woke up at night because of a strange noise behind the window. I looked outside and I noticed an old man heading towards one of the abandoned houses. He disappeared into the darkness. I asked myself, why would it be necessary to go there at night? At once I felt an irresistible desire to know where and why he was heading there. Right after dawn, when the first sunlight started to go through the dense crowns of trees, I decided to explore the village. Bob was already on his feet at that time. He offered me to have breakfast, yet I refused because it was early morning, and I wanted to look at local sights in the daylight. The village appeared before my eyes in all its abandoned beauty. Its old houses covered with moss and bindweed seemed to be a kind of skeletons from the past. I took my camera to capture this doomed atmosphere. Firstly, I headed to the house where I saw an old man coming yesterday's eve. The door creaked under my hand, like it was warning me that something unusual was waiting for me inside. Dust hung in the air, and rays of light breaking through holes in the roof created an indescribable picture. I found some old photos in one room. Probably some people had been living there, captured in these photos. Their faces were shining with happiness and joy, which created a contrast with the gloomy look of the village nowadays. It made me think about how rapidly things tend to change in our lives. While I continued my exploring, I found an old diary. Its pages were worn with time, but you still could read what was written on them. They told me about the village life and its residents' joys and sorrows. Yet, the more I read, the more references to strange rituals and sacrifices that were supposed to bring prosperity to the village appeared in the records. I was overcome with a feeling of anxiety. I closed the diary and decided to return to the old man's house. Outside, the wind died down, and the silence in the village became almost tangible. I felt that my inner voice told me it would be better to leave this place with each step I made. When I came back, the old man was already waiting for me. We had lunch, and I asked him about those rituals that have been held in the village. He was surprised, and he said that he had no idea about them. I felt anxious, but it was quite weird to believe in what was written in some diary. I guess the old man saw my anxiety and apparently decided to dispel it. Over lunch, he talked about past times when the village was full of life. His stories were full of fond memories of neighbors, holidays, and the daily life of the community. Meanwhile, lunch turned out to be surprisingly tasty. The old man put a lot of effort into preparing a real feast. Besides, he was interested in my life, my trips, and what was even more unusual, in my vision of the future. His questions were full of sincere interest and kindness. There was not the slightest hint of any ulterior motives or dark secrets. It all made me forget about my fears for a moment and truly enjoy the old man's company. I decided to take a nap after lunch. I put my hands under my head, lay on the bed, and fell asleep quickly. I woke up right a second before a sharp knife edge almost touched my chest. I managed to knock Bob's hand away from me at the last moment and to avoid a deadly punch. The struggle began, and I hit the old man at his head with all the fury. This made him stunned for a while. Then I found a rope and knotted Bob tightly. His confessions followed this. His words were a confession of a madman. He confessed to murdering all the village inhabitants. He told about it with the greatest pleasure, and he savored each memory in his head. He said that he had committed these murders in honor of the god of death, who had promised an eternal life for sacrificing innocent people according to his beliefs. This story raised fear and disgust in me. I was a step from becoming his new toy with a deadly end. I decided to leave the house immediately, and to leave Bob tightly tied inside. Unfortunately, when I came back with a police patrol, Bob had already disappeared. The house was empty, like its owner never existed. The search led nowhere. The old man seemed to have disappeared into thin air. This story had a good end, but the shadow of what happened to me remains besides forever.